Alright, so my name's Daniel, and I write iOS stuff and Mac stuff, and I'm going to talk to you about drag and drop on iOS. So, before we actually talk about drag and drop on iOS, because we always like to lie on titles, I'm going to do a history lesson. So, if you just cast your mind back to 1992, I imagine ABBA was, the new single was out on the radio here, and I was in the UK in a beautiful yellow and red ensemble here, and my dad had just got a Macintosh LC2 for his work. 4 megabytes of RAM, I think around at 16 megahertz or something, and on Saturdays, when he went to the office to do some work in the morning, because the secretary wasn't there writing everything up for his journalism stuff, I was allowed to go on the computer, as long as I didn't break it. So I'm 9, I run in, I sit down, and I switch it on, and here we go. So I'm booting up my Macintosh, well, the Works LC2 for the first time. It was never this fast, you're absolutely right. But being 9, and it being 1992, the mouse wasn't like a common thing. The computer the work had before was I think it was a CPM. It's like a green screen with like 2 vertical disk drives on the right. So I had no idea what to do. So we launched Macintosh Basics. And Macintosh Basics was the program that came with every Mac at that time that taught you how to use a Mac. And because the mouse was new, it taught you how to use a mouse. And it actually had this thing. If you know how to use the mouse, use it to click the button. And if you couldn't figure out how to click the button, you would go through a tutorial on how to use the mouse. So I'm just going to show you like a very quick version of that. So first, it would actually demonstrate how pointing works. Like you move the plastic thing, and the arrow thing moves as well. It actually did a little animation demonstrating like picking up the mouse when you ran out of space. And next, it had you practice pointing at stuff. So like you'd point at the coffee cup and steam would come out, and you'd point at the fish tank and it would come alive, and you'd point at the clock and time would fail. And then next, it would immediately take you into practicing drag and drop. So you drag your file into the filing cabinet, and you put the one that I wrote into the bin. So that is how important Apple considered drag and drop. So it was the in the first tutorial on your first computer with a mouse, you were taken into drag and drop that quickly. And just as an aside, so this next thing isn't drag and drop, but it's one of my favorite parts from Macintosh Basics, is there's like a thing at the end that's like, make sure you learned everything, and you have to feed the fish. And if you notice, the fish actually gets fatter every time you feed it. So I never, unfortunately it wouldn't let you kill it, but you know, you could feed it quite a lot and it got quite big. So in 1992, the order of importance of using a mouse and interacting with a Mac was pointing, clicking, drag and drop, then double clicking. It did double clicking after dragging and dropping. Contextual menus like right click didn't actually come to the Mac for another 5 years. It was macOS 8 that brought that in. So back then, 1992, point, click, drag and drop, in that important. So now it's 2017. I'm dressed slightly less badly. And now we have iOS. Just so a note, I don't know how many of you here know Nevin, but Nevin did it first on iOS. So today we're going to talk about the iOS 11 SDK and the new drag and drop stuff that has come in. But Nevin, our friend over here, actually wrote super hacky, right? They tend to be library for older versions of iOS that actually let you do drag and drop over the split view on iPads. It was super great. But now Apple has stolen that. And I mean, it might not have been Nevin's original idea, because we have evidence from 1992 here, but Apple now have drag and drop on iOS natively. So, I mean, the thing is, iOS is a touch UI. So why is drag and drop so interesting? Well, it's how we interact with it. Like, it's how you interact with things. You drag them off the desk, and I'm not going to drop this because it's not mine. And actually, iOS and iOS devices have, like from the very beginning, the idea is the device, the hardware, the software gets out of the way, and you physically interact with the object on the display. And that is drag and drop. But iOS has never really had any APIs for, like they've had APIs for moving things, but actually picking things up, duplicating them, inserting them, things like that. There's never been a unified thing. But it's interesting on iOS 11, and I think iOS 11's drag and drop is actually one of the better APIs Apple has come out with. So if Apple's sharing API looked like the data delivery API in drag and drop, I'd be super happy. Like in my opinion, it's a lot better. It's a much better way programmatically of getting data between processes than the existing like share sheet thing, and even the APIs for it. And I'll talk about that a little bit as we go along. You can pass data between processes in RAM. You don't have to like spew temporary files down, try and guess when they're been done with and delete them again. Like you can just pass them through in RAM. If you are using files, it will be page-backed data, so it doesn't actually use any more RAM. This is too long for this, but when you drag and drop, you can provide a ton of different representations, and the destination app decides which one it wants. So you just say like, here's everything I can possibly give you, and the app, like depending on where you drop it, and the context here is important. So if you drop your thing on like the URL bar in Safari, it will take a URL representation, but you could drop it into a file upload box in Safari, and it could immediately just put that into the file upload box on the web page you're looking at. And open in Safari doesn't have that kind of context, with the share sheet. Also, the destination app can get progress, so it can, if the operation to get the data from where it's coming from takes a while, they can see the progress of that and display progress to the user. And you can actually cancel it as well. So if it's taking too long and the user gets bored, or the app gets bored, or whatever, you can hit cancel, and that cancellation handle will actually go, rather than just the destination just ignoring it, the cancellation handle will go back to the source app, tell it to cancel, and it can clean up nicely. So, that was the whole slide at once, never mind. So, a drag on iOS is a promise to the destination, whether it's somewhere else in the same app or a different app, that I have, or it can provide like a representation of the thing that you're dragging in one or more types, and this is by UTI. The ordering of these UTIs is important, and we'll talk about that in a second. A drag also has a preview image, so the user can see what's going on. And a drag can actually have more than one object, so you can like pick up a ton of photos, for instance, at once. But they're not all necessarily of the same type. So if the source app allows it, they can pick up some photos, some text, some other stuff, and they're all just kind of piled in there. So the destination app just has to be a little bit careful about that and not assuming, like, oh, looking at the first item, oh, it's an image, loop through the images, because like the third one might not be an image. And a drop is when a drag gets released on a view that accepts it. It's sort of calling in that promise. So I now want this data, please. And it's very asynchronous. It can actually take a few minutes if you're getting data from my app. You do need to display progress. And if you don't have your own sort of inline progress things to display, UIKit will do it for you. It will just block out your entire app and put up a progress bar with a cancellation handler. So if you're not sure, a UTI is a computer sort of standard way of defining what a thing is. And when you drag and drop, you add the UTIs that you support. Apple describes it as the most to least detailed. So if you have a document, the first UTI will be your document. So if the app requests that, they will literally just get your document. Then you might have like a PDF preview, and then an image, and then maybe a URL to find it on the web, and then maybe just some plain text, just so if they like drag it into a text editor, they'll get text. you don't need to generate all these when you start the drag. When the drag is completed, you'll get a callback saying, the drag completed, please deliver your PDF representation. Then you can generate it and asynchronously deliver it back. If your drag is always contained within your app, you can actually also put like a local object on there. So rather than having to encode like a database ID into a drag, and if you're just dragging it to another view to drop it somewhere in a list, you can just give the local object through the drag rather than like encoding a database ID and then decoding it and finding it again. So enough writing, that's boring, let's go. Images. So this on the left is my app, and these are showing photos that are on a camera. They do not exist on the iOS device. On the right is the Files app. Now, we are going to drag a file from my camera onto the Files app, and you will see that Files doesn't have any clever progress UI. So this is UIKit's bog standard UI for doing a drag across a process. So it took my app a few seconds to get the image from the camera over to Files, and because Files.app doesn't do anything smart, UIKit will present that dialog, do dialog, the spinner, the user can tap cancel and it will be cancelled. What you saw is basically if you do the minimum you possibly can in your app to receive drags, that's the experience the user will have. It's not bad, it's pretty good. Now, we're going to look at mail. Oh, no we're not. No, yes, I planned this. So this is what Files did. So when you get a drop, you get an object called a drop interaction. Sorry, a drop session, and that represents the thing from the other process. You can say, like, I want your progress indicators, like my progress words. If you do not want what Files app just did, you tell it not to put the progress UI up. So you say the progress indicator style is none. And what you're telling it is, you have no UI because I do. So if you as an app writer do your own custom UI, you tell UIKit not to have any with .none. It's the wrong way around. But the session also has a progress object, so you can get the progress from that. It's updated, it's observable with key value observing. And as of iOS 9, UA progress view has an observe progress property on it. So you can just give the progress object from the session to the progress bar and you're done. The progress bar will fill up, it's all good. And if you want to cancel, I mean, accepting a drop and then immediately cancelling, it's probably a bad idea, but if you wanted to do that, you can trigger the cancellation handle like that. And then at the bottom, you now request the objects from the source. So what file, you don't actually say necessarily you want a particular UTI, you can just say the drag and drop system, I want an image. And then UIKit will look at my UTIs, say, oh, it's got a JPEG image there, that'll do, and then it will just give you a UI image back. So you don't need to deal with datas and stuff like that. You just say, I would like an image, please. Then that you'll get a call back later with the item once it's delivered. So Mail, does do that code, so it has its own custom UI. So if you see when you drag a file into Mail, it will immediately put the images there, and then you'll see a little pie thing spin around, because that's Mail's custom progress UI. So my app is delivering the data into Mail. While this is going on, you can carry on typing your email, it's all good. And then there we have the picture. That's Sweden in autumn, it only lasted a few days. So that's why I think this API is so good for sharing, because it gives context, you don't have to screw around with files on the file system while it's doing it. Yeah, so that's how drag and drop works for sort of getting data across. If you look super carefully in those videos, you'll see both files on Mail delay a little bit until they display progress. This is because most of the drags you will receive will be from on the device, so they won't take a long time to get the data between the processes. It'll be instant. It's always asynchronous, but it'll just be pretty quick. So you wait just like half a second or so, and if the data hasn't come in, you put up a UI to say, let's slow it. So another reason drag and drop is so interesting from a programmer perspective is it's what the Mac's drag and drop API also should be now. But it's it was invented in 1992 and it probably hasn't changed. So you get some nice preview images and you get some super nice support for generating your own custom preview images when you're dragging around. If you pick up multiple things, they'll all kind of flop together and sort of, when you move them on the screen, they'll kind of bounce and stuff. That's all for free. Your UI tables and your UI collection views, they basically do most of the work for you in terms of, there's a demo video later, like adding, inserting items sort of into the table view and things like it. It's really nice. And with multi-touch as well, you don't have to, on the Mac, you have to select everything you want to drag, command click, 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 accidentally click on the wrong one, swear because you screwed up your selection. That's gone away on iOS. So you pick up one item, you just tap on more, and they all sort of get added to the drag. So that's pretty nice as well. So the UI for dragging is actually more complicated than you think, but it is all done for you. But the flow is quite weird. So what you see repeating here, if you can see it, is it's what's called the pickup animation. An UI table view and UI collection view generate this for you, and it just shows the user that they can pick up an item. So if they long press on that repeat thing, it sort of gets a tiny bit bigger, gets a little shadow under it, and that just demonstrates to the user that they can drag it. Now, at that point, no drag items have been made. And you can customize that UI, but not a lot. So by default, it's just a snapshot of a shell, the cell. And if you like, you can crop it, and that's it, really. You can give it a Bezier path. So if you only want to have just the bit that has text in, sort of rise out, you can tell it to crop. This is owned by the table view or the view that the drag is coming from. So this is a delegate callback from the table saying, please generate a drag preview for the item at this index path. Next we have full previews. So you see there, once you pick up the cell and move your finger, it kind of goes whoop into that view there, and that view is the thing that gets dragged around. There's one of those per item in the drag, so if you could pick up all of those items on the left, you'd actually get a pile of them in a stack. This is also a snapshot, but you give it a view. So you can build a view hierarchy however you like, super complicated if you like, but it then takes a snapshot of it. So I don't think you can do anything animated. But you can have a rounded corner, and a fancy mask and whatnot. Now this is owned by the item that is being dragged. So you basically need to kind of write an extension somewhere for it to be sensible, otherwise you'll be writing code that makes UI views somewhere in your database model, which isn't what you really want. But you can make an extension so your database, your model object can generate a drag preview. And this gets called for on the background queue, I think, as the drag starts. You're also not guaranteed to get one per item. So if you pick up 10 things, it'll probably only have a stack of the first 4 or 5, and then you just won't get preview views for the back lot. So another video here showing nothing, sweet, showing on the right is a UI table view, and there's no custom code in there other than yes, I can accept a drop from over there, and it will. So what I'm about to see now is I'm dragging that variable with a custom preview onto that row. You see it highlighted, it gives you a plus button so you can drop that thing into another row. That's all done for you by UI table view delegate. You just need to say, oh well, this thing near here. So as you're dragging, you'll get callbacks saying, this drop item is near this row. What do you want to do? You can say, well, this can go into this row. And the previous one you saw where it opened up holes, so you tell it this can go between these 2 rows, and then table view will just do everything for you and give you callbacks to insert the item when the drop happens. So again, the table view and the collection view do all the heavy lifting for you. You have table view drag delegate and table view drop delegate, and collection view drag delegate and collection view drop delegate. Implement both, why not? And you get an index path based UI. So It's all in XPath. If you've made a table view, you can do this super easily. Where it gets a tiny bit more complicated is if you want to customize it. And here you have a generic drop interaction delegate, and that just says I can do drag and drop stuff. You just put that on a view with that second line there, and you get delegate calls saying like a drag entered, the drag is moving, the drag left, what have you, and then you need to inform UIKit, yes I can accept this, no I can't. If I can, it's like a copy or a move, and then the drag preview will get like a little plus on it if it's a copy, and all that. So here's another drag and drop thing that I built. So should learn by now. So I pick up a pile of photos and I'm dragging them across the map, and you see there's a little targeting reticule, and then I put the photos there and I've geotagged those photos. So there's metadata in the photo now that the photo's down there. My Swedish geography isn't so great. Is that Luli? No, that's up. Is it Norrköping? No. Anyway, so that is a completely custom drag and drop interaction, and using the UI drag interaction delegates that I said. The problem is for security. Security is the next slide. So say that's a map. It's just blue. We're on the sea, and I'm dragging a photo of my dog because he went swimming into the view. When the drag enters the view, you get a callback saying it's entered. There is now a drag in your view, and stuff's happening. You do not get the preview views. You don't know how big they are. You don't get where they are. You only get where the touch is. And in the example behind, I add that little target view as a subview to the map, because you don't get access to any of the views that are being dragged for security reasons, because I guess they don't want you taking snapshots of it. And if you drag a photo over from Facebook and you can immediately see the view, you go, oh, you can steal people's pictures from Facebook before they actually decide to give it to your app. So you don't get access to anything but where the touch is. So I add, as soon as the drag comes in, I just add my target view to the map. And then as the drag goes around, you get this session did update at roughly 60 Hertz. So be quick in here. And I have a method called visual center of the target view, which just gets the point and just adds a bit, it just makes it go up a bit. iOS at the moment is very consistent in how big it will size the views. So when you create a drag, you can give it like a huge image view, but it will squeeze it right down. It's like a maximum size. So when you're creating drags, you don't actually have to care about that. You just give it a view. You can make an image view that's the size of your 40 megapixel image. And UIKit will, it'll be slow, but UIKit will scale that right down. So it's like that big. That is actually bigger than an iPad on that projector, isn't it? But, so you just kind of have to guess. So if you're doing precision dragging like that, you kind of have to guess. So in the example before, I just kind of put it up a bit. And I've tested it, and it's fine on all the iOS devices I have. So I just set the center of my target view. I didn't actually put it on the slide because I ran out of time. Yay me. And then you return a drop proposal. So there you're telling UIKit, in this case, that you can copy. So that adds the little plus symbol to the preview image. Again, that I didn't add to the slide. Super great. There is a mode here where you can tell the proposal that it is precise. And what that will cause is UIKit will drop the preview down relative to the point. And the idea is that when you're, if you want to insert, a picture into text, if you're dragging text, you don't want the text to take up the space where the destination is. So if you imagine a big squidgy finger like mine over that red dot, the picture will just be at the top of my finger, and I can really see where it's going to go. So again, you don't know how far it goes down. UIKit won't tell you. But if you just say drop is precise, it'll drop the preview down, and then you can do different maths with magic numbers to figure out where to put the target. I think with mine it was about 60 points up, but I'm not sure. And then when your dog decides not to swim in the sea anymore, you'll get another delegate saying that the drag is no longer in your view, and you're no longer concerned with it, and then you can just remove all of your craft. There are also callback methods if the drop, if you've said yes, I will accept this drop, and then the user releases their finger, you'll get a session, something along those lines of session will commit, and then you can actually request the data and then start the stuff you saw earlier. Very quick one. If you're on so all this cool cross-process stuff is actually iPad only for entirely no reason that I can see. But even if you're on a compact app, drag and drop is lovely. Like that geotagging UI you saw before works perfectly fine on an iPhone. The tray is smaller. It works really well. And you can also do things called spring-loaded interactions. So you can add a spring-loaded interaction to a button, and then if the user drags something to that button and hovers for like a second or so, it will trigger. And what you can do is, so if you add one to a close button on a presented view controller or a segmented control, the user can pick up that thing, drag it over the close button, hover a second, it will go away, and then you can navigate through the entire app if you add enough of these interaction controllers, while dragging an item. So they can get items, anywhere if you do this. It's actually really nice sort of interaction. The Mac has had this for a long time as well. So if you drag files around the Mac, hover on a folder in the Finder or push space, it will open up that folder so you can drag things through. And it's an extension of that, really. So next steps. This is super complicated. The API starts very simple, very nice, but to customize it, there's tons of different phases of the drive, which there's no chance of covering in this. So I really hope you want to do this in your app because it's really nice. It's just so nice to be able to pick up a photo from somewhere, put it into a specific album in Photos, rather than having to add to Photos and switch to Photos, find the photo, add to album, scroll, 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 tap. You can just drag, done. Lots of image editors support it now, so you can drag images in as layers on them. It's super nice. So there's a set of really good WWDC videos this year about all this, and about, I think there's 4 or 5 of them. They're really good. Apple actually has a very good set of documentation for once on this, where tons of example projects that don't compile anymore because they're written in Swift, and yeah, but they are really good if you can spend 20 minutes to fix them. Right, sorry that was rushed, but I'm done.
Thank you very much. So, do we have any questions for Daniel? Right over here.
Oh, it's David. All right, here we go.
Does Safari provide drag and drop support for content types? Like if there's a special file type on the web that my app supports, can I just grab it from a link in Safari and drag it into my app? Do you know?
Maybe. What will probably happen is you'll just get a standard URL UTI in your drop, and then it's up to you to actually figure out what that is. You can drag images and stuff out of Safari, and I think it will just give you the data as a JPEG. So, I don't know. But it's most likely a URL or something rather than it being smart about what your UTIs are and what that MIME type is.
You said that a drag object can have multiple document types attached to it with a hierarchical order. Does the user get any say?
Yes, sorry, I meant to talk about this. No, they don't, and it's a big pain. So if you're at all aware of photography, there's a thing called a raw file, which is like a higher quality, bigger image, often, that I work with a lot. But not a lot of things support it. So if you're, and a common photography workflow is to group the raw and the JPEG image together into one photo, because they're the same photo, they're just different formats, basically. If you pay attention to the documentation and put the most detailed one first, i.e. the raw file, a lot of things will just go, no, I don't know what a raw file is, and that's the top one, so nah, don't support this thing. Where Mail, for instance, will just take the top one, whatever it is, and just attach it to the file, because you just want to attach files to an email, and Mail doesn't care what it is. What I've done is there a setting in my app to, if you're exporting a raw plus JPEG image, prefer one or the other. and I just kind of use that in drag and drop. So I don't have a setting for drag and drop because that's crazy, but I just have a hint from elsewhere that the user would rather have a JPEG file or this high quality file. And whichever one they've chosen, I just order it that way. So if the user prefers a JPEG file when working with both and just exporting them somewhere, I'll actually put the order JPEG raw plain data.
Okay, but you can't decide depending on the target.
You cannot decide depending on, as when you start a drag, you have no information on the target at all. You just say, please deliver the data, and that's it, of this UTI type. So you have no idea where it's gone. You can figure out if it's within your own app, of course, but if it goes somewhere else, no. You have no say, no knowledge.
Question over here. Please raise your hands. Meanwhile, if you have a question as well.
If the things that we are dragging and dropping are files, do they have any kind of similar process like UI document picker on the host app?
Could you rephrase the question?
So there's this. So I was on this project. I was doing bigger audio files, 400 megabytes.
Yep.
That kind of scale, and you could import files from iCloud, and it looks. I'm guessing it's going to work with drag and drop. I hope as well. So they were asking me then, can we use that? And I said, I don't know. But one of the things that was happening there was the size of the file, because these ones were pretty big. One thing I learned, so what they had was that it was for recordings of musicians. You had to, when you were bringing something to a project, you would go into another view controller to say what type of recording it is and details and all that kind of stuff. While I was doing that, I figured out that when I go to the next, as you said, there's some sort of temporary behavior for those links that you get the files from. So this is my question. That's why I'm asking, like, if it's going to have a similar behavior as UI document picker. I was using UI document picker there, and you get this, menu. You go to your iCloud, pick something. If it's in the iPad, you just get a little. It's not full screen, and then you pick that file, and it's gonna really copy that file. I'm assuming it's going to make a temporary link to the other app sandbox or something like that.
No, so
can you do big files? That's pretty much
my... so the only thing you get either way is you're asked to deliver and you get an NS data, a data in Swift, like literally a data object with a suggested file name and the UTI, and pretty much that's it. If you create on the host a data from a file, that will be a page-backed data, so it won't be loaded into RAM until you actually decide to write it to your file system or load it.
But if the file is like 2 gigabytes?
If the file is 2 gigabytes, it will... So the NS data, page-backed NS data doesn't take any RAM. As soon as you start getting bytes, it reads them from disk. So unless you try and load the entire file into RAM at once, it won't use 400 megabytes or whatever. So if you receive this big NS data from the other app, like a 400 megabyte file, if you just write it down to disk, it will effectively be a copy, like a file copy.
Start making a copy, write that to your own sandbox to have it.
Yeah. So you only have access to the data when it's given to you, like in that callback that says please deliver. That's in that delivery callback. That's the only time you have that data. If you haven't finished with it by the time you return, it's gone. So you need to put it on disk or just import it or do something with it. If it's a big file, it won't consume. So on an iPad you could have a 30 gigabyte movie file and transfer it across fine, even though the iPad only has 3 gigabytes of RAM or whatever. Just because this is the way the data is backed by the file. But that's kind of an implementation detail. You don't need to worry about that. The callback comes back on the background queue. So you can just do like with that mail thing, with the progress bar. That's all happening in the background. So you can you can carry on the main thread. You can put dialog box up, or you can just do it as a process, and it will happen on the background queue, and that's fine. Yeah.
All right. So if anybody has any more questions, I'm sure you can talk to Daniel afterwards. So thank you very much once again, Daniel.
Thank you.